Real Life, Real Crime is a true crime podcast brought to you by Woody Overton and executive producer Toby Tomplay.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney prior to and during any questioning. You can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights?
Your crime spree was over, son. Yeah, you thought you had it licked, but Detective Overton made your sugar turn to shit. Get ready, you're gonna do time. Real life, real crime.
Warning. This episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, may contain descriptions of acts of violence or that are of a sexual nature. It should be for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I did not get the facts of these cases off of the internet or from some television show. The facts we're retelling you were presented to us by the victims of the crimes or the perpetrators who committed the crimes against the victims. My description of the crime scenes are what I saw with my own two eyes. If you're gonna get offended, please turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And coming to you today, I have a special guest and a family member to me now on the phone, and it's Miss Stephanie, who is Courtney Coco's mom. Miss Stephanie, you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Hey, Woody.
Hey, dear.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, all right, y'all. So Miss Stephanie has something that she wants to read, and then we're going to talk about it briefly, and then we'll explain what we're doing today. Miss Stephanie, you go ahead.
Okay. 3 months ago, when the final podcast came out, Who Murdered Courtney Coco, I was asked by APD Detective Tanner to remove the podcast. And he said it was because of too many details. Well, we did immediately because I did not want to interfere or hurt this investigation. And so that happened. Any and all tips or information, anything with Courtney's case stopped. And then the investigation just inching along really slow. And who the suspects are, we walk among them. They carry on about their lives as usual while we wait for justice. And to say this is like a slap in the face is true. The number one suspect has even threatened a civil. So with all this being said, I am asking Woody, as Courtney's mama, to the removed podcast and hopefully get people talking again. I have nothing to lose and hope that in reposting this podcast, an arrest will be made and Courtney will finally get the justice she deserves.
All right.
And I'm just asking y'all to please help us again.
Yes, ma'am. And okay, y'all, I want to make something really, really clear. When I recorded that episode myself and I dropped it that night and it wasn't even out for maybe 45 minutes, and Miss Stephanie asked me to take it down, and I did so at her request. I did not take it down because it had too much information in it. Everything that is on the podcast, the suspects in the case have been questioned by the authorities with lawyers present, even at some points with lawyers present. Everything that's in there, they already know. Their defense attorneys already know. And so wasn't doing anything to hurt the investigation, but I still pulled the podcast because Miss Stephanie asked me to. Now, Miss Stephanie, the right after the podcast and we pulled it, you had a meeting with some officials.
Yes, sir.
And who all was there?
Went to the DA's office here at Rapid and spoke with the head DA, and there was other people present in the room.
And who's
assistant?
Can you give their
victims
names?
Advocate, the detectives, the chief of police, and we were told in that meeting that they knew my child, that we knew who killed my child, and just needed a little more time to get everything they needed to make an arrest. And that was 3 months ago. And to this day, it's been arrested. And we have, we did a little picket a couple of weeks ago at the Rapides Parish Courthouse, hoping that maybe if they saw us with signs demanding that the DA would do something. I personally reached out to the DA that day and told him we were downstairs to please come talk to us. And he responded back that he was at a funeral and he would call me back ASAP. And I still have not heard from him as of today.
Friends of Courtney Coco held a peaceful demonstration outside of the Alexandria courthouse earlier today. The group, which has been fighting for justice for over 15 years, says that they are still waiting for an arrest of Coco's killer. Courtney's mother, Stephanie Bellegarde, says that she had a meeting this past November with the district attorney, and she claims he told her that he knew who killed Courtney and would be making an arrest within 2 weeks. Now, Bellegarde says that 8 weeks have passed and there's still not been an arrest, and the family is ready for something to happen.
I just want them to know that we are not going away. We will fight till the end for justice for Courtney, and that we just want whoever did this to her to be behind bars where they belong.
So we reached out to the DA's office. District Attorney Philip Terrell says they've met with the family several times and it's been far too long for the family waiting for justice. Here's a joint statement from the DA, Alexandria Police, and the Rapides Parish Sheriff's Office. Quote, an arrest has not been made for the killing of Courtney. We have full confidence in the investigation work presently being performed by both RPSO and APD. If and when these law enforcement agencies gather evidence that they believe proves beyond a reasonable doubt that a specific person murdered Courtney, then we are fully confident that they'll seek an arrest warrant.
So I still have not heard from the detective since 2 weeks, 2 Thursdays ago.
Right.
So I'm just kind of just like a stick in the mud, waiting for answers, as we've always done.
Right. So let me clarify it for the listeners. Y'all apologize if it's any poor audio. You went to a meeting, and I know when y'all go to those meetings, you roll family deep. This is a super strong family, y'all. So I'm sure your mama was there.
Yes.
My ma and your sisters were there.
Yes, sir.
Y'all,
Mm-hmm.
when we got this case file from them, every meeting they've had in 15 years, all the information, I mean, they should have been detectives. Okay. So I know when they went in there, they don't just go in there and listen. They go in there and they write things down, et cetera. So I just want to clarify the DA, Philip Terrell, was there.
Yes.
Yes. And the sheriff at the time, whoever he was, he told you, just give us a couple weeks. But first of all, the most important thing is when the information that we gave them on the suspects, he told you that is correct. There's no doubt in his mind that they are the ones that murdered Courtney.
Well, out and murdered my child.
I'm sorry.
His name and everything.
Stephanie, can you say it again? Because your phone cut out. Did he tell you that the suspects we had, that he knew that they...
Yes.
He told you...
Who killed my child.
And that we were right.
He specifically said number one.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then he promised to take it to a grand jury?
Yes, sir. He said that that's what we would need to get a grand jury to, I guess, see how strong of a case we have.
Right. But you've heard nothing. 3 months, y'all. Now listen, it's
Nothing.
3 months as of yesterday. It was November the 10th, and this is now February 10th.
February 10th.
Oh, so it's today, I guess. But so this is it. And I have not edited anything, Miss Stephanie, from the first episode. I have not listened to it again, and I'm not going to. I'm gonna splice our conversation today onto it. And then we're going to let it go, and the people can do with it what they want.
All right.
Now, I know a bunch of lifers called after we picketed the other day, and the district attorney's standard office they even recorded them saying that we don't have a case file, we don't have anything to do with it.
District Attorney's Office.
Hi, I would like to speak to someone in reference to Courtney Coco.
Hold on.
Thank you.
So Carol's office can help you?
Hi, and I was hoping to get some information on the Courtney Coco case.
Okay. Unfortunately, a case has not been turned into our office yet.
So what do
we
you...
don't have a case file.
The APD, Alexandria PD has it. So if y'all want to get up in arms and I'm not telling you how to feel, but I can tell you how I feel about it. And if you want to do something, obviously calling the district attorney's office isn't going to do any good. Although he promised Miss Stephanie that, give me a couple weeks. It's been 3 months. And even after we picketed that day, that's when he put released a statement to the media about they don't have anything to do with it. It's APD's decision. And he told you he was going to call you. He would call you. He was at a funeral. He never bothered to call you.
ASAP.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And
never called me back.
And so y'all, you do listen to it. Do with it what you will. And we are not going to give up on justice for Courtney, especially when the powers that be sat there in the room and told her entire family that the murderers, they know who it is. They know we've got it right. Yep. And they were going to grand jury the whole 9 yards, and they only have a decency to give her a phone call in 3 months. So, Miss Stephanie, when we drop this episode, I reckon your phone's going to be blowing up again. They're going to ask you to pull it, etc. And I'm going on the record stating unequivocally, I don't know what they've got evidence-wise in the last 3 months that they didn't have before, but I'm telling you, everything that is on this episode, the bad guys already know, their lawyers know, and the cops know. It's not too much information. The only the way this be too much information is when the general public finds out and they really get pissed off that nothing's been done and these killers are walking free. So I'm not taking it down again. Sir. I don't care if Donald Trump calls. Sir. I'm not taking it down. This is for Courtney. Sir. So and y'all would never do anything to hurt an investigation, but these facts are already known to these guys. But we're not. They're already known. That's right. That's right. We're doing it for Courtney. Yes, sir. And we want to thank everybody.
And that's the main doing. What I need to do is for Courtney.
That's right.
And if I get arrested or in trouble, I'm not worried about that either.
I guess what, I'll be right there with you, sweetheart. All right. And
yes, sir.
So, but we're not breaking any laws, by the way. I just want you to know that. But we're going to break somebody's ego. But that's on them.
Just trying to hold someone accountable for what they did to my child.
Well, hey, these are elected.
You didn't put there.
These are public officials that they have to answer. Even the police department has to answer. I mean, it's just what it is. How dare you go 3 months and not? You promise you. This is not the first time, Stephanie. How many years ago did you call me for the first time about this case, and then they promised you the moon, and they did nothing, and then they promised you the moon, and it did nothing.
Yep.
So, but anyway,
2 years ago. Yep.
So. Well,
yes, sir.
Well,
so I'm ready to do what I got to do. It's not about me. It's about Courtney.
Okay. Well, we're going to do it. And I got love for you and the whole family. And we'll let the
Yes, sir.
let the craziness be what it be after the episode drops, and we're not above picking it again or doing whatever we have to do. So,
No, sir, we're not.
y'all. So Stephanie, thank you so much.
Want answers. I want to rest. Thank y'all very much for listening.
All right, we love you, sweetie. All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Woody.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. I'm coming to you today and going to tell the story on this episode of who murdered Courtney Coco. And without a doubt, this is the most important recording I've ever made and probably will ever make. And, you know, I'm unscripted and unedited, etc. But I have been thinking for weeks now on how to present this in a chronological and order, because everything that I'm going to say is so important to Courtney's case. So you just have to bear with me. But, you know, we haven't dropped an episode on Courtney for the last 3 weeks. This would have been almost a month, because the investigation into her homicide was active and ongoing. And the last thing I would ever do is something to hinder the investigation by authorities into Courtney's case. I don't want to do anything, or didn't want to do anything to screw up any potential evidence or anything like that. And I'm not doing it now, because everything I'm going to tell you today, the suspects in this case, they already know every single bit of this information. They have been told this information. And not only have they been told this information, their defense attorneys know all of this information that I'm going to present to you. Now, so there's no chance of me messing up anything or interfering with anything, because they know. They've been told, they've been questioned, they've done, had everything presented to them that I'm going to present to you. And I'm not going to use their names, but I'm going to tell you the story of who murdered Courtney, and I'm going to present to you evidence. Okay? The evidence came to light through our investigation, and then we turned it over to law enforcement, and it's come to light from various sources, we'll just say that. But first of all, I want to thank everybody out there. We took on this monumental task of Courtney's 15-year-old cold case. I don't know how long ago it's been, y'all. It's almost 3 months, I guess. And I promised Courtney's mama that I wasn't going to give up on this case, and I'm not going to give up on it. And everything I'm going to tell you today, I've already told her, and she knows, and the family knows, and she is 100% agrees with me putting this out there. So we make sure we get justice for Courtney. Okay. So what I want to ask each of you to do is to not play armchair detective. I don't want you to come up with any theories or anything like that. I just want you to listen to the facts that have been uncovered during this investigation, the evidence that has been uncovered during this investigation since we started it. Now, you know that we took it on Courtney's case. It was 15 years old. It was frozen. It wasn't just cold. It was frozen. And we started it, and we reached out, and the crowdsourcing technique and using the fans and the listeners and appealing to the public to come forward with information. And you answered. so many heroes, and I'm not going to name their names today either, but so many heroes stepped forward, put their own selves in jeopardy and in peril to come forward and give evidence against these two, and I'm going to call them suspects. I'm going to call them suspect 1 and suspect 2. These people came forward and listen, let me back up for a second. We got so many different suspects. We didn't have tunnel vision on this. These suspect 1 and suspect 2 weren't even on our radar when this thing started, right? And we had all these different angles and all this tons and volumes of information. And we worked through it through 7 weeks. It took Jim and I to narrow the field down and really focus in to the point where we had enough evidence where we, no longer being law enforcement officers, had to turn it over to the officials so they could further the investigation. Now, when we turned it over, we never quit working the case. We never quit taking new tips, new leads, and following those things down, disproving them, or adding to the arsenal of evidence that we have against suspect 1 and suspect 2. So it was a very, very thorough investigation on our end. And we, as y'all know, at a certain point, we had to present it to the powers that be so they could further it. And today, I don't want y'all playing detective. I want you to be a jury member. I want you to act like you're a jury member in a trial and you're hearing evidence. And when I get done telling all the evidence today, I want you to decide. You make your own decision on what should happen. I don't know what should happen. You make your own decision. You draw your own conclusions when I get done today, and you do with your conclusion what you want to. Okay, I'm not telling you to do anything one way or another, but you do whatever you feel led to do. All right, and I'm certainly not doing this to put anybody on blast or say somebody's done something wrong or not done something wrong. I am laying out facts that were discovered in the investigation. And I want you to listen like you're a juror member. And at the end, you let whatever you think it may be, you let it be known. Okay? So, that being said, the suspect 1 and suspect 2, a little bit of background on them. They have been best friends since they were little boys. Ride or dies. Absolute best friends, running buddies, did everything together, etc. The super, super tight, way back when, at least they were in 2004. It came to light through one of the many tips that came to light was someone called in and said that they had a person in their life or had a person in their life previously that always said that suspect 1 killed Courtney Coco. And he had always been adamant that Courtney Coco was murdered by suspect number 1. Now, this ends up being suspect number 2 that's telling this person this over these years. And it got to the point, they were so adamant about it that they actually made a recording of suspect 2 talking about suspect number 1 and they did it under the guise of asking suspect number 2, hey, have you heard about this podcast about real life, real crime, the podcast? And he was like, oh, I'm trying to get involved in all that. And this is on a recording, y'all. And I'm going to paraphrase it for you. But when he said, well, you know, who do you think did it? And he said, suspect 1 did it. And he said, suspect 1 did it 16 times in approximately 6 minutes. He said suspect 1 killed Courtney Coco, and where he wasn't even on the radar at this point until during that recorded conversation, he slipped up. When the person asked him and said, well, you know, how do you think he did it? And he said, I don't know how he did it. He said, but man, she looked like she was beat all to hell, bruised all up from her waist up on her body. And then he realized what he said, and he said, but I heard the autopsy report said she wasn't beaten or anything. And he said, I can't figure that out because she looked like she was beat to hell. Well, the only problem with that is, y'all, you would not know that. That was never released to the public. It just wasn't done. Nobody had that information. Now, let me tell you what suspect number 2 was talking about. Suspect number 2 was talking about what we call lividity. Okay? Lividity is when you die and your heart quits beating, whatever position you're sitting in, once your heart quits pumping the blood throughout your body, gravity takes control and all your blood drains to the lowest point of your body. All right. And when it does that, it looks horrible. It looks like severe black and blue bruising. And you think about it, you get a bruise, somebody hits you on your arm, you get a bruise, that's because the blood pools in that spot. Or you bump into something, you get a bruise, that's because the blood pools in that spot, right? That's what gives you the discoloration. Well, when your heart quits beating, let's say you're laying down on your back and your legs are in the air, you're put in the trunk of a car right after you're killed, and you're left there for a couple of days, guess where all your blood's going to go? It's going to flow down towards your bottom, up to your shoulders, and if your head's been up, it won't be on your head, right? But so suspect 2 says in this recording, he said, when asked, how do you think suspect number 1 did it? He said, man, I don't know. But she looked like she was beat all shit. Man, she was bruised from her butt to, her shoulders, or however it was he said it exactly. But even when he said that, I was like, holy shit, man. And then he said, but the autopsy said that she wasn't beaten or anything, and there was no signs of trauma. He said, I can't figure that out because she looked like she was beat to shit. But she's just really black and blue from her lower part of her body to the top part. The only way you know that is if you saw it. So that's the first time that suspect 2 comes on our radar. Now, and again, suspect 1, he's adamant. Suspect 1 killed her. He killed her. I'm telling you, he killed her. And I'm telling you, he killed her. And 16 times he said it, and I think he said it in approximately 6 minutes before maybe he, got uncomfortable with what he was saying, and then the rest of the recording is just fluff. And he changed the topic. So I drove through the night and picked up that recording, and that, along with some other stuff that we did have some information on suspect 1, and I'll start to piece that together for you now. Suspect 1 was living with his girlfriend at the time, and on the night that the autopsy puts that Courtney Coco was killed the night of the domino game. He was at their residence, and he left the residence for approximately 30 minutes or so, and Courtney lived right down the street from him. And then he returns, and then a couple hours later, he leaves, same night, and he never comes back until sometime on Monday. And in fact, on Monday, his mother had to drive, I'm talking about suspect one's mother, had to drive from Alexandria, Louisiana to Lake Charles, Louisiana to pick suspect one up to bring him back to Alexandria. Problem with that is his girlfriend said there's no reason for his mama to have to go down there and pick him up. He had his own vehicle here in Alexandria. I don't know where the vehicle was, but I mean, you know, certainly it didn't break down or anything like that because he was driving immediately after that. Other things about suspect one. A tip was called in that suspect one asked another person to clock him in at his work on the Saturday morning, the Saturday morning after the domino game. He called this guy and said, "Hey man, can you clock me in, punch me in at work?" Why do you do that? Right. And he's gone and for the weekend, and his mom has to go pick him up on Monday from Lake Charles. And let me tell you, geographically, Alexandria, Louisiana is in the middle of the state. Lake Charles is in the bottom western corner of the state, close to the Texas line. And it's probably, 50 miles from Winnie, Texas, where Courtney's body was dumped. Okay. So, immediately after that, and after Courtney's funeral, etc., suspect one starts writing in his girlfriend's diary to Courtney, unsolicited. He had never written in this girl's diary before, ever. And he starts writing stuff in the diary, and she just thought it was so freaking weird that he's writing stuff to a murdered girl in her diary, right? Take it a step further. Within a couple of weeks after the funeral, he shows up at home and comes in the door and has a new comforter set that he had just purchased for him and his girlfriend. And guess what? Is the exact same comforter set that went missing from Courtney's house. And that this very distinctive because it was leopard skin. Okay. I don't know too many guys that are going to go out and buy a leopard skin comfort set, but he does that and he brings it home. Again, the girlfriend thought that was highly irregular, and strange. And they broke up, a couple months later or whatever. And then they got back together, and the girlfriend liked suspect one's mom, and they went over to visit her at her residence. They walk in the door. Suspect one's mom is sitting on the couch, and she's covered up in what appears to be Courtney Coco's comforter, the leopard skin print comforter. And she said it freaked her out. And she was like, and it just took her back. And she just, was really kind of weirded out about that. And she knows what Courtney's comforter looked like. And that's a proven fact. Moving back to suspect two. Suspects two, the person when got the audio recording for suspect two for us, she said on that weekend, suspect two on that Friday had been in Alexandria riding four-wheelers at a place they called the Dunes with Courtney. and that he had got in a four-wheeler wreck that afternoon, that Friday, and he was supposed to come to Lake Charles that weekend for a birthday party and bring a bike or something like that. And he never showed up. When he does show up, it's Sunday sometime. He shows up and he has a cut on his hand, a fresh cut on his hand, and he's missing his wedding ring. And when they asked him, said, what happened? He said, "Oh, I cut my hand on a vehicle I was working on and I lost my ring." This person was suspicious of that statement and that he had been gone all weekend, missed the birthday party, etc. So they went out. Now, suspect 2 had a job in a work van. He delivered items to convenience stores between Lake Charles and Winnie, Texas. The items he delivered were like over-the-counter medications and stuff like that. So he has this work van, and this person goes outside and looks in the work van in the back of it and sees a large amount of saran wrap, some drug paraphernalia, and a pair of small female blue panties, underwear in the back of the van. They confronted suspect 1. This person confronted suspect 1 about the underwear, etc., and he denied it and what have you, and played it off. And he had to load his van at this time. He said he had to load his van and go make his delivery route. Stay with me. This is important. So he shows up after being gone in that Sunday night, and he's got fresh cut on his hand, wedding ring is missing, and he says he has to load his van. And the person went outside and found the underwear and the women's underwear in the back of the van. So now we're looking at 2 things. Because of what he said on the tape that was made for us about the bruising, the severe bruising. Man, it looked like she was beat to shit from her waist up. And nobody knew that. And if he had taken the time to look it up, he would have known it was lividity. And it happens to every single one of us when we die. Whatever position you're sitting in, the blood drains down that position and it makes you look like you're severely bruised. So that put him on the radar. Then that's when we found out about he returned that weekend, late that Sunday night, had the fresh cut on his hand and the panties in the back of the van and all that. Some point we turn it over and the investigation continues, and the investigation shows that it's discovered also some tips came into us that suspect 1 straight up told them that he murdered Courtney Coco and wrapped her in her comforter and took her out and put her in the trunk of the car. All right. Now, he didn't just tell 1 person. He didn't just tell 2 people. He didn't just tell 3 people. He told 4 people, not at the same time. He told 4 different people that have come forward, given sworn affidavits, and are willing to testify in court that, hey, he told me he murdered her, wrapped her up in her comforter, and put her in the trunk of the car. Now, you put somebody in the trunk of the car like that, again, and the lividity sets in, and we know Courtney's body, when it was found Monday morning, showed advanced signs of decomposition. And at first, Detective Rabelais and them couldn't believe that she had only been dead for a couple of days because her body was so far decomposed. Well, that's because it was riding in the trunk of a car, and it was still hot that time in October, the beginning of October that year. Now, you know how hot your car is when you get into it regularly, right? Like the front of your car with the windows, etc. The trunk is like that times 100. It's like literally like an oven. So that would account for the advanced decomposition. We know Courtney was seen alive that night. She's on video at a convenience store late Friday night. And there's a lot more statements and witnesses that can attest to the fact that she was alive late Friday night. He told 4 separate people that he murdered her at different times over the span of the years. 4 separate people. These people don't even know each other, and that these people had the balls enough to come forward once they heard the podcast, and other people said, well, this person said that suspect 1 told them, and that person was reached out to him, and they were like, hell yeah. He told me, I'll never forget that he told me. And yes, they gave their statements and they are willing to testify in court. So that's where we're at, right? So the suspect 2 is brought in and asked about they didn't ask him straight away or play the tape for him or anything like that. It asked him, do you know anything about suspect 1 killing Courtney Coco? Nope, don't know anything about it. Absolutely nothing. Well, we know that's a lie. I mean, he said it 16 times in 6 minutes. Then they press him a little bit more, and he gives a little bit more, and then he goes back and forth, and he gives a little bit more every time. He ends up finally saying that suspect 1 told him that his mama, suspect 1's mama, got Courtney's blanket out of her car and took it inside and washed it. Inside her residence and washed it. Well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Why would you just say that after you changed your story so many times? Why do you say that? And the one thing that never changes, y'all, and I've been doing this a long time, the one thing that never changes is the truth. You don't have to keep changing your story if you're telling the truth. So he ends up saying that suspect 1, I think he said at first he told him on the phone, and he ends up, after he's pressed a little bit further, and he says, no, I actually went over there 2 days after Courtney's body was found, and he told me my mama got Courtney's blanket comforter out of the trunk of the car and took it inside and washed it. Now remember, this is the same blanket, allegedly, that suspect 1's girlfriend saw the mama covered up in however many months later. So suspect 2 continues to get pressed, and to the point where, he doesn't say too much else other than that, and he leaves. Now, I'm going to look at something real quick. All right, so suspect 2 worked for a delivery company which delivered over-the-counter medications to convenience stores. His delivery route was from Lake Charles, Louisiana to Winnie, Texas. He had a delivery van provided to him by the company that he worked for. He had 2 residences at that time. One was in Alexandria and one was in Lake Charles. The person that came forward about him is adamant that he was not there that weekend because they were pissed that he missed the party and didn't bring the bike like he was supposed to. That person gave us a sworn affidavit about his strange behavior and his whereabouts, about suspect 2's whereabouts or lack thereof the weekend of the murder and his strange behavior thereafter. That person stated that suspect 2 was missing that weekend And they remember this clearly because he was attending a work-related party with that person on Friday, for which he missed because he was involved in a four-wheeler accident earlier that day while chasing Courtney Coco on a four-wheeler that she was looking to purchase from him. This person said that they received a call from suspect 2's mother that he was involved in the four-wheeler accident at the dunes outside of Alexandria, Louisiana, and wouldn't be attending the party. And this person said that they argued with suspect 2 and that he never returned home to Lake Charles, Louisiana that weekend. This person remembers that weekend clearly because they were incredibly disappointed in suspect 2 and were angry that suspect 2 was missing and didn't pick up the bicycle. On October the 4th, 2004, in the early morning hours, suspect 2 arrived back home in Lake Charles, Louisiana, where he resided. This person says she was extremely suspicious of suspect 2's behavior and drug usage. They noticed that suspect 2 had a cut on his hand and that his wedding band was missing. They asked him about this, and he claimed that he lost the ring at the shop where he does mechanic work on the side. They didn't believe what he was saying, so they decided to look inside his van. When they looked inside the van that he used for work, they noticed some drug paraphernalia, a lot of saran wrap, along with a single pair of blue female underwear, size small. This person became very upset with suspect 2 and began accusing him of having an affair, etc. Now, this was only a few hours before Courtney's body was found in Winnie, Texas. Suspect 2 then left a few minutes later in the work van after loading his work supplies and began making his work deliveries. It's to be noted that Courtney's body, and I know y'all know this, but was found nude from the waist down. After the discovery of Courtney's body on October the 4th, 2004, according to this person's official statement, suspect 2 became obsessed with talking about Courtney. He would repeatedly say that suspect 1 did this and that suspect 1 has the comforter that was missing from Courtney's house. This person asked suspect 1 how he knows that information and how he knows it's Courtney's, and he wouldn't answer the question. This person stated that it was really weird that suspect 2 would constantly continue to talk about Courtney like he was obsessed with her. In late 2004, this person questioned suspect 2 about Courtney and her death. Suspect 2 became irate over the questioning and began beating on this person and threw him out of a moving vehicle. This person remembers this clearly because it was the first day of a new job that they had in Alexandria, and they had to be comforted by their new work associates, as it was very obvious she was beaten up that day and had a traumatic episode. This person recorded a conversation that she was having with suspect 2 in September 2019. This was the one she recorded for us, y'all. On this voice recording, suspect 2 stated 16 times that suspect 1 did this to Courtney and how upset the family is going to be when they found out who actually did the murder. Suspect 2 stated that Courtney was wrapped in her comforter and put in the trunk of her car. He further stated on the audio recording that Courtney's body was black and blue from the waist up. Note, this was never known to the public or released. This is because of her position in the trunk, along with the lividity, which was only present from the waist up. When law enforcement went to pick up suspect 2 finally to interview him, the first thing he tells the detective is, when he gets to his residence, he says, and I quote, The text says he needed to go talk about Courtney Coco. And suspect 2 says, I've waited 15 years for this. He voluntarily then went with the detectives to be interviewed about Courtney Coco's death. He denied having any involvement or knowledge about Courtney's case other than saying that suspect 1 had her blanket at his mother's house. He said he was told by suspect 1's grandmother before changing his story later on that he was actually told by suspect 1 himself. So that's the first time he changed it. When asked about his whereabouts on the weekend of October 1st, 2004 through October the 4th, 2004, suspect 2 stated that he was at the dunes with Courtney Coco and suspect 1 riding four-wheelers. When he got there, he injured himself and had to go to the hospital. He had to leave his four-wheeler with Courtney and came back to get it from suspect 1 at the dunes on Saturday, October 2nd, 2004. He said he went back to his residence where he slept most of the day. He left to go back home to Lake Charles, Louisiana on Sunday morning to clean out his work van and load it up for deliveries and then start early in the a.m. on Monday. Note, this is not factual because if he went home, he wouldn't have missed the party. He also did not have his work van loaded because he had to leave for Winnie, Texas, where Courtney's body was found, and he went back to Lake Charles, Louisiana to load his van. And that was late on Sunday night, and that's when that person got suspicious and went out and looked in the van and found the panties and the saran wrap, etc. Supposedly he was given a voice stress analysis test and he failed. After failing the voice stress analysis test, suspect 2 then changed his story completely. Before, he had no involvement or knowledge. Now he started to claim the following. He claimed that he was called by suspect 1 2 days after Courtney's body was found, which would be October 6, 2004 on a Wednesday. He claimed that suspect 1 told him that his mother found the comforter in his car and she took it inside and washed it. Suspect 2 then went on to say that he drove by the location where Courtney Coco's body was found in Winnie, Texas, one time in the early morning hours before her body was even discovered. He claimed that he didn't know her body was there at the time that he drove by. He then went back to Lake Charles, Louisiana, because he forgot his delivery load for his daily deliveries. Now, again, he's changing his story. He said he had loaded the van on Sunday morning, and now it's Sunday this night, and he just happens to drive by where Courtney's body was dumped. And let me tell you something. I went there. You don't happen to drive by this place, and it had nothing to do with his delivery route. All right, so as I told you, he changed the story again from not knowing anything to putting himself at the body dump scene late that night before she was found early Monday morning. Now, listen to this. Suspect 2 then went on to say that he drove by the location where Courtney's body was found in Winnie, Texas, one time in the early morning hours before her body was even discovered. I told you that. But he said he did that, but he had to run back to Lake Charles. You can't just run back to Lake Charles. It's like 50 or 60 miles to where her body was dumped. But he goes back to Lake Charles because he just happened to forget all his delivery stuff, right? And that's when he showed up, cut on his hand, ring missing, and the panties were found in the van. Now listen to this. Suspect 2 stated that he knew that the phone records are going to put him there, meaning at the body dump site, that he knows his phone records are going to put him there, and that is the reason why he wanted to admit to why he was in Winnie, Texas. He said he passed by Winnie, Texas 3 specific times on October the 4th, 2004, before and after Courtney's body was discovered. Suspect 2 then changed his story once again that he actually got up early in the morning on Monday to clean out his van. He drove to Winnie, Texas before turning around to head home to get his workload. He doesn't remember a pair of panties being found in the van, but he did admit to drug paraphernalia and saran wrap. He stated that he did not have a delivery near where Courtney's body was found. Okay, so it's to be noted that this is a 90-minute drive one way from Winnie, Texas to Lake Charles. When he comes back to load his van, because he happened to forget his delivery material, he comes back to load his van. That's when the panties were found in the van. He didn't have a delivery anywhere near where Courtney's body was found. He admits that person confronted him. He admits to her looking through the van. He admits to her accusing him of an affair and drug paraphernalia. He then requests an attorney and is released at that time from any further questioning. A couple days later, on around 11/3 of 2019, Suspect 2 contacted 2 other people who came forward and made statements about this, and says Suspect 2 confided in these people, and as they were driving, and he stated, well, these people stated that Suspect 2 was crying uncontrollably when they first got on the phone. Suspect 2 said he is going to prison for the rest of his life because his DNA is on the trunk of Courtney's car. Suspect 2 further went on to tell them that he was in Winnie, Texas, and drove by where her body was dumped 3 times, but didn't know that is where her body was dumped, and it was by coincidence. He also told them that his phone records will put him there, and that is why and that was because he was making deliveries in the area, and that's just simply not true. That place where Courtney's body was recovered is nowhere near the store he had a delivery at in Winnie, Texas. So take it for that. That's Suspect 2. You heard the facts as they've been uncovered. His story changed continuously, and he even ends up putting himself there. He ends up telling people his DNA is going to come back in Courtney's vehicle. When he was questioned about this, you know what his excuse was? He said, well, I'm being framed by a person that was in my life at that time. They put my blood in Courtney's trunk of Courtney's car. That blood, by the way, y'all, was mixed with Courtney's DNA. So there you have it on Suspect 2. Now, bear with me 1 second. Back to Suspect 1. So I'm doing this, so I'm making sure I'm not leaving anything out. Excuse me 1 second. Suspect 1. He was the boyfriend of this person I told y'all about in 2004. This girlfriend of his has totally been cleared in this investigation numerous times, including by myself, by a polygraph. And by other people on the polygraph, okay? That she had absolutely nothing to do with it. But she did say that he left. He went missing on 10/1/2004, and for about 40 minutes. And a short time later, he returned. That after 40 minutes, he returned. A short time later, he left again after midnight and did not return until Monday, October the 4th, 2004. And that was the morning that Courtney's body was found. On that Monday, he was picked up. Suspect 1 is picked up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Now, this is where Suspect 2 has a residence at also. He's picked up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, even though he lived in Alexandria, by his mother and was driven back to Alexandria, Louisiana. Again, is a known fact that he had his own vehicles proven by his girlfriend at the time. And so it didn't make sense as why he needed to be picked up in Lake Charles. This is confirmed by the girlfriend's statement. According to Suspect 2, Suspect 1 called Suspect 2 and asked him to come by his mother's house. Suspect 2 stated that when he got there, Suspect 1 met him outside, and Suspect 1 told him that his mother found Courtney's blanket inside of his vehicle and took it inside and washed it. To date, 4 witnesses have come forward and provide sworn affidavits and are willing to testify that Suspect 1 told them directly that he killed Courtney, wrapped her body in a blanket, and stuffed her in the trunk of her vehicle. These statements came from 4 different people, period, independent of each other, and they all had the same story. This came to light after the podcast was aired. Our podcast, Real Life, Real Crime, was aired in 2019. When Suspect 1 was interviewed about those people giving the sworn statements, he said they're just trying to get him fucked. And again, after Courtney's death, Suspect 1 started to write into his girlfriend's diary about Courtney. He returns home to their residence one day with the same comforter set that Courtney had, but this one was brand new, y'all, still in the packaging. And then at some point later, they broken up, got back together. They go over to visit Suspect 1's mom because the girlfriend liked her. Walk in, and she's covered up with the leopard skin comforter, same one Courtney had. And this goes with him supposedly telling Suspect 2 that his mama took Courtney's comforter inside and washed it. Now, why would you wash it if you were going to throw it away? According to his work record, Suspect 1 only worked 15 hours the week that Courtney died, and he was not at work on that Monday, October 4th, 2004. A witness that called into Crime Stoppers and has been verified was asked by Suspect 1 to clock him into work on that Saturday, October 2nd, 2004, even though he wasn't at work. He was later picked up in Lake Charles on Monday by his mother. His alibi has always been that he was at work on that Saturday. But when he was questioned about that alibi, he changed the story and claimed that he was at the dunes that Saturday riding 4-wheelers with Courtney and Suspect 2. Suspect 1 and Suspect 2 have been best friends since they were toddlers. Suspect 2 has always made the comments to the person I mentioned that Suspect 1 killed Courtney and his mother has the blanket. And then we're talking over a period of years, y'all. And this before we got her to do the recording. But on the audio recording of Suspect 2, he states 16 times in 6 minutes that Suspect 1 killed Courtney. He further stated the family is going to be so upset when they actually found out who did it. Suspect 1 also supposedly failed polygraph testing. There are two types of evidence, y'all. Two types. You either have direct evidence or you have circumstantial evidence. And I want to explain this to you because it's so important that you understand. You hear people saying, oh, this case is all circumstantial. Well, circumstantial is not a bad thing. Although this case has both elements, direct and circumstantial evidence, this I'm actually going to read to you. I know what it is, but I want to read so it can be clear and not mistaken. All right. There are two types of evidence from which you can determine what the facts are in this case: direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. When a witness, such as an eyewitness, asserts actual knowledge of a fact, that witness's testimony is direct evidence. On the other hand, evidence of facts and circumstances from which reasonable inferences may be drawn is circumstantial evidence. Let me give you an example. Assume a person looks out a window and saw that snow was falling. If he later testified in court about what he had seen, his testimony would be direct evidence that snow was falling at the time and he saw it happen. Assume, however, that he looked out the window and saw no snow on the ground, and that he then went to sleep and saw snow on the ground after he woke up. His testimony about what he had seen would be circumstantial evidence that it had snowed while he was asleep. The law says that both direct and circumstantial evidence are acceptable as a means of proving a fact. The law does not favor one form of evidence over another. It is for you to decide how much weight to give to any particular evidence, whether it is direct or circumstantial. You are permitted to give equal weight to both. Circumstantial evidence does not require a greater degree of certainty than direct evidence. In reaching a verdict in a case, you should consider all evidence presented, both direct and circumstantial. Now, let me tell you something. Most people don't realize that DNA, unless you have the person on video and they touch the counter like in a robbery and you get the DNA from that spot, that would be direct evidence. DNA left at a crime scene is circumstantial evidence. If I go in and I commit a crime and I cut myself and I leave my blood and my blood's there, but nobody saw me. There's no cameras, no witnesses, no nothing, but the crime lab comes out and they test my blood. My blood is in CODIS and it comes back as a match to me. That crime lab technician is going to testify at my trial that whatever the number is, yes, it's a 1 in 3 trillion chance that 3.6 trillion chance that this is not Woody Overton's DNA. Meaning that, I mean, you know how many people are in the world, right? This almost just unbelievable odds that it's not mine. But guess what? It's still circumstantial evidence. It's not direct evidence because it's circumstantial. You can't prove it. You have to infer by the circumstances. And the circumstances on the DNA would be is such an astronomical number that not even that many people exist in the world that it has to be mine. But it's still inferred. In this case, suspect 1 telling 4 different people that he killed Courtney, I would call that direct evidence. They heard it from his mouth, right? And maybe you could call it circumstantial. I don't know. But it's bad. The suspect 1, certainly the suspect 1 telling suspect 2 that the blanket, his mama took the blanket out of the car and took it in the house and washed it. Well, again, that you would just throw it away if you weren't going to keep it. And suspect 1's girlfriend seeing that blanket and identified it as Courtney's comforter. Suspect 1 writing in the diary. Suspect 1 buying the same comforter set, doing all this stuff. You know, it is what it is. Y'all make the decision on it, okay? Suspect 2 putting himself at the body dump site 3 times because he says, I know my cell phone records are going to show that I was there. But he comes up with this lame ass excuse that he forgot to get his work stuff. And remember, his story hadn't stayed the same through any of it. He changes. And so then crying, saying, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life because my DNA is coming back out of Courtney's trunk. That's, but I was framed. Somebody put it there. I mean, come on, man. So that's it, y'all. I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out, but those are the highlights of the facts. Now, to make an arrest in the state of Louisiana, all you have to have is probable cause. Probable cause is 50% plus 1. It is not beyond a reasonable doubt. Probable cause is 50% plus 1. To get a conviction in the state of Louisiana, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm not going to tell you what I think, but if you were sitting there listening to the facts that I provided you tonight as a jury member that had no prior knowledge of this case, and you put it together, and I'm sure a prosecutor put it together a hell of a lot better than me, and whatever. But if you're listening to the facts, I want you to make your own decision about suspect 1 and suspect 2. And I want you to do with that decision what you will. So that's it. We took on this case, and the national average of solving a cold case is 1 out of every 100. And the longer the case is cold, the lower that percentage of clearance rate is. We did what we said we were going to do for the family. And I told you before I started telling you all this information that the family knows everything that I've told you, and Courtney's mama knows, and she was absolutely on board with me telling everybody where this case is at. You be the jury. You do with it what you will. I can tell you the family's not going to take it laying down now that they know the facts. And that's just the facts that I know. And I'm sure there are more that I'm not privy to, and that's okay. But because what I heard and what I know and what we developed over the case of this however many months now, it is what it is. I'm not going to say my opinion. I don't want to influence anybody one way or another. But you be the jury. You decide about suspect 1 and suspect 2. And I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And I want justice for Courtney Coco. Thank you for listening. And I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And this story needs to be told. Justice for Courtney. I appreciate y'all. Peace.